when we don't have that fuel for a long period of time, blood sugar drops. And that is very concerning to the body because, oh my God, our brains are going to die. That's what the body is thinking, right? Because if you don't have glucose, it's extreme reaction. But what it does now is it's going to release stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, to get those blood sugar levels back up to a safe range.
I gotta get myself a little more faith, a little more love.
I'm your host, Christa Bigler, and I'm going to guess we have at least one thing in common, that we're both in pursuit of a less stressed life. On this show, I'll be interviewing experts and sharing clinical pearls from my years of practice to support high-performing, health-savvy women in pursuit of abundance and a less stressed life. One of my beliefs is that we always have options for getting the results we want, so let's see what's out there together.
Just keep breaking. I gotta get myself a little more faith, a little more love.
Today on The Less Stressed Life, I have Karlee Close, who is a certified gut health coach, host of the Beyond Bloated podcast, and founder of Beyond Bloated, where she helps women eliminate chronic bloating and improve their digestion through simple, sustainable lifestyle habits. Her work is rooted in her own experience after developing severe digestive issues in her mid-20s. After starting a stressful full-time job as a data analyst, she spent years cycling through restrictive diets, food fear, and thousands of dollars in supplements without relief. Now she teaches women how to support their gut through foundational habits, balanced meals, and a restrictive approach so they can feel confident, energized, and bloat-free in their daily lives. Welcome to the show, Karlee.
Thank you so much, Christa. Excited to be here.
All right. So big switch from data, kind of, right? There's still data to analyze very often with clients. So let's hear a little bit about your story and how things started. Like, how did you go from feeling fine to suddenly having, I think, debilitating stomach pain and bloating and food sensitivities and other things? Tell us a little bit about how this all happened.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll start by saying fine in quotation marks because I was not fine. I just didn't realize that I wasn't fine for a long time. And it wasn't until the gut issues kicked in that it was no longer, I could ignore it. But going back to the beginning, I lived a very unhealthy lifestyle, as many of us do through high school, university, college years. I did not know how to cook. Everything came out of a box. I did not move my body unless it was dancing at the bar. I drank excessively with my friends on the weekend, etc. No sleep, all the things. And because of that, I was sick all the time, and not just getting colds, but getting reoccurring UTIs. So I was on antibiotics over and over again. I would get really nasty throat infections every single year. Canker sores. There was one period of time where I had 5 canker sores in my mouth at once, which is excruciatingly painful if you have ever had a canker sore. And just fatigue, all these symptoms that I brushed off as my genes. I have bad luck. I have a weak immune system. Sucks to be me, but that's life. And then I started my first full-time job as a data analyst. So I went to school for math. I was like, yay, I'm going to go be a real adult in the world and get this job. And I was miserable. I hated it. I hated going to the office 8:30 to 5 every day. I was bored. I was not fulfilled by the work that I was doing. And it created a lot of anxiety for me. Like every morning I was so stressed. I didn't want to get out of bed. I was like, I don't want to go to this job. I hate it here. And that is when my gut issues started. About 2 months into that job, I remember having my lunch and getting severe stomach cramping, running to the bathroom, explosive diarrhea. I looked 6 months pregnant every single day, and this just kept repeating. And before that, even though I had symptoms, I didn't know they were symptoms at the time, I didn't have gut issues. And I had always been thin my whole life, even through my horrific lifestyle. I just don't gain weight easily. So I didn't know I was unhealthy. And when I started looking 6 months pregnant every day, it was very noticeable to me. And in my early mid-20s, you want to wear crop tops and look cute. And I was embarrassed by my body. And I was having stomach pain. And I was having explosive diarrhea. And I didn't know what to eat. So that is when I started my gut health journey, really, because I was like, okay, I can't live like this. This is really disruptive to my life. It's embarrassing. So the first step I took was to go see a naturopath to get a food sensitivity test done. I wanted to figure out what foods were causing the problem so I could stop eating them to stop having the pain and the bloating. And this test lit up like a Christmas tree. And my naturopath said to me, "This is the worst one I have ever seen." And as a girl in her mid-20s who doesn't know how to cook, I was in my vodka Sunny D era. So you could imagine how traumatizing it was when I was told, stop eating like literally 100 foods. And I had a mental breakdown. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to die. I'm going to starve to death. There's no other way to eat than the way I'm eating right now. But I did. I started eliminating gluten and dairy first. My mom was already gluten and dairy free. So again, I thought I just inherited it from her and it's just a thing that was passed on and now it's my turn. So I did feel slightly better. I was still having stomach pain and diarrhea and I was still bloated, but it was less often. So that kind of started my journey because I eliminated gluten and dairy and I started to feel a little bit better. So my mindset was food must be the problem. I am now sensitive to food and I need to figure out the right combination of food to eliminate to feel better. And that is where the spiral started. So I will pause there for you.
Yeah, I think that this is pretty common. And so it's like always trying to figure out how to meet someone with the stereotype of, oh, it must be the food because that makes logical sense because it's the digestive system. But there's a lot of other reasons for why the digestive system doesn't want to do what it wants to do. Actually, as you were telling your earlier story with all the symptoms that you didn't know were really like things that could all be symptoms that could actually be related. I was wondering if you had a mold exposure because having recurrent UTIs and some of the other, the chronic fatigue and other things, and then sore throat and then ill a lot, like that sounds like you had a mold exposure at some point, which would make you look reactive to a lot of foods and make your test results light up like a Christmas tree. So I was curious if you ever found that in your history as well. And I'm also intrigued, and you're Canadian, so I'm intrigued because sometimes it's interesting to think. It's interesting to me because so often we go to the GI doctor first, and then when we don't get what we want or need, and I think GI doctors are very good at diagnostics with cameras and scoping and things like that. But usually people go to a GI provider before a naturopath. And it's also, depending on what province you're from in Canada, it's like more or less readily accessible to go to a naturopath. So it's interesting that you went to the naturopath first, especially in your 20s. So those are the two things I thought was interesting. Will you share about those? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So the mold exposure, I did do a candida cleanse because once the spiral started, I started trying to dig in what's going on. I did read a book, The Bloated Belly Whisperer, and that actually led me on to SIBO, which is a side story. I read another book and it was, I can't remember the title right now, but it was related to candida. And at the start of the book, there was a quiz and it was like, if you have this many symptoms, you have a candida overgrowth, pretty much. And I had all of the symptoms. So I did do a candida cleanse for about 2 months. And there were pros and cons to it. I will say it did eliminate my seasonal allergies, which was really cool. So I do think I had a candida overgrowth. But during that time period, I was already obsessed with what I was eating. And if you've ever done a candida cleanse, insanely restrictive.
Yeah.
And I am a very type A personality. So I was like, this is what I'm doing and I am not straying from it. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it is difficult for me to put on weight. And I lost a lot of weight during that. And it was not a healthy amount of weight. And it took me over a year to put that back on once I got out of that mindset. So there were pros and cons to it. But yes, I do believe I had a candida overgrowth. And part 2, I never saw a GI specialist because they refused to see me. But I did see my standard doctor before the naturopath. I didn't mention that.
Because you had limitations with the insurance where they wouldn't see you? Just curious.
No, so the way it works in Canada is we all have, for the most part, a family doctor. So I went to my family doctor. I explained, hey, all of a sudden I am getting bloating, pain, diarrhea after I eat. What's the deal? And she told me, you have a lactose intolerance. You probably have celiac disease. Just stop eating those foods. She did give me a requisition to get blood work done. I have an extreme fear of needles, so I did not want to do the blood work. And I just was like, okay, the solution would be stop eating gluten and dairy anyway. She did not give me a referral to a GI specialist. I tried to see her several times and she was just like, no, just stop eating those foods. She gave me a prescription for gas medication to help with the bloating. And I knew about naturopaths because my mom was seeing one. So she put me onto it. And naturopaths are not free in Canada, but I was working full time. I had a benefits package, so I could use my benefits to pay for the naturopath. So it was not an out-of-pocket expense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, there's a couple things I wanted to just interject in story overall, because I just want to clarify, if someone had a older mycotoxin exposure, then like Karlee said, I don't think a candida cleanse is like a long, it is miserable, right? As you said. And so it makes a lot of sense for that time period. It was very common to do for a very long time. I'm sure people still recommend it, but typically we're trying to eliminate this toxin out of the system. Otherwise it creates these aggressive fungal symptoms typically, but it also suppresses the immune system, et cetera. When you're not exposed to it, it's not as horrific, but sometimes it can linger. So I just wanted to mention those little tidbits because it's something I feel like I talk or educate about a lot. But I wanted to, as we start to talk about bloating, and I'm curious, so one of my first questions is going to be how long you circled around this stuff before you started looking at alternative things. And so I will share, I was telling you this offline, that there was a time where one of our taglines or one of our advertising, like essentially billboards, was like, we help people with like bloating and burnout and skin rashes. I don't know. There was like 3 B's, but I can't remember the last one, but it was bloating. But what I saw was, it's very interesting for our stereotypes. When we use the word inflammation, there's a certain number of people that will come to you for joint pain because that's like our stereotype of inflammation. But inflammation could be pretty much anything. And with bloating, there was a very subset of clients that would come to us, and we would do the things that would support the physiology of the body, but they would have refractory bloating. And I think this is where the rest of what we're going to talk about comes in, where stress is typically the self-limiting factor. And I remember having this one nurse one time, and she had a real hard personality, right? Like she had to go be strong for a lot of people. I always feel like nurses have a really high tolerance for pain because they see a lot of stuff. And at one time, she identified that she was most bloated, or she was pretty much bloated, on the 2 to 3 days that she was on staff, that she was actually working. And so that reminds me a little bit of your story, because things really escalated as you got into this job, and it would be easy for you to miss that pattern. And I guess you did for a while, right? Naturally, because you were there every day. Whereas this person was at some point able to identify, it does actually seem to be worse when I go to this job. Because one of the challenges is, or something my heart kind of melts around, is like, or it's the sorrow for me, is this concept of unrealized stress and how it can look all these different ways. So there's some real physiological, like how we're eating, that literally creates physiological changes in the body and creates what looks like food sensitivities or immune reactions in the body. Not necessarily the food's fault, but how the food's being processed. So tell us a little bit about, like, how long did you circle around these things before you started to look at, because you're thinking that you getting a food sensitivity test is the alternative from the provider, right? So we went back that step and it's, oh, this is the basics that I got from this provider. Don't you do this and this, which is just interesting to hear what different people recommend, and no comment. It's fine, whatever. And then you go to the naturopath and you do the food sensitivity test. And for me, I used to do a lot of food sensitivity testing about 10 years ago. It was great until it wasn't enough. And then there must be like another phase. But what I find, I was just dealing with this morning with a client, she said she had come in and asked about reintroducing food. She said, I did this food sensitivity test 1.5 years ago. And you are long past the reintroduction periods, long past. So tell us how long you circled around this before you were like, maybe these alternatives I was trying aren't effective alternatives. Because it sounds like it took some time if you had time to read a couple books.
Oh, yes. It was an embarrassing amount of time. I went through this cycle of restrict supplement tests for probably 5 years. And I started with the food sensitivity test. I did a food sensitivity test 3 times. I did, for the first 3 years, I would retest about a year later because I knew food sensitivities would change at that point. I didn't fully understand what I was doing. I was very early on in my journey, but I just kept taking the test to see like, all right, what's the foods now that I have to avoid? And during that time, my naturopath would give me different supplements, things, kill this, kill that, whatever. I didn't know, again, what I was doing back then. So I would just take it, eliminate foods. Obviously, it wasn't working because I kept trying and kept going back and kept doing things. I read books. I discovered SIBO. I tested positive for methane dominant SIBO. Again, I was told, kill this, kill that. Nothing was ever taught to me about why do I have SIBO? Why does it keep coming back? Candida, read a book about that, discovered, I probably have a candida overgrowth. Did the cleanse for 2 months. I did it again later because I was like, you know what? I must not have killed it all because I'm still bloated. So I did it again. And I just kept doing this. I did a liver cleanse. The liver cleanse was the most miserable thing I have ever done. You could ask my boyfriend. I was sitting at my kitchen table in tears because it was a 10-day cleanse of eating essentially apples and fruits and vegetables, and there was no protein, and I'm a hungry girl. I was starving, but I was like, I have to do this liver cleanse because this is my problem. So I was very obsessed, and all of these different methods and strategies and elimination diets were causing a lot of stress for me. And looking back now, it is no wonder I was not feeling better because all of the solutions that were provided to me were so stressful to me, and it was making everything worse. But I didn't know that, as you mentioned, like most people don't realize that stress is a massive factor as to why you have gut issues, along with so many other habits that we can get into if you're feeling up to it. But that was, a 5+ year journey for me.
Yeah, the problem with stress is it's such a baseline for us. We don't really think we're stressed. And this isn't exactly your story. I pick out or I use this story a little bit recently, especially a woman who has children. She's been very often she's in a stress response because she's waking up and reacting and taking care of another human for so long where it becomes this literal baseline. And it might look for someone without that, am I picking up and responding to lots of messages on my phone? It's a very reactive thing overall, which is where like nurses, they're taking care of how many quote unquote kids, right? Like different patients, right? And they all need something all the time, ringing their lights. It's like kind of reactive. We're never really taught much about our nervous system, right? And what it might feel like to be activated. People will ask things like, how do I just stay? How do I like remove stress? It's like you don't actually remove stress. You get better at fluctuating in and out of a stress response state. But if you cannot identify what that looks like for you, which takes some radical self-awareness, then probably you'll hit rock bottom first, like most of us, before you realize that none of this is working. And to your point, briefly, like SIBO is something in the United States as well has become more readily accepted. And I always said, we're a little more interesting than 2 bacteria overgrowth, right? Like we have a little more going on. There's what's going on above and below. And so unfortunately, it's a very high percentage of people that have relapse of SIBO because it's not really taking care of coming in and just trying to kill a couple bacteria, which really kills a lot of bacteria, isn't really covering the ups and the downs and all the other pieces. And so as you said, stress is the self-limiting factor, but it looks like different things. So what are some ways that we communicate stress to the digestive system that feel tangible, like using your own examples if you want, that might cause bloating?
Yeah. Stress. The thing about stress too is that you can be mentally stressed and feel it. You're like, oh my God, I'm nervous. I'm anxious for this thing. That is a stressor. But you can also be stressing your body out without realizing it by doing things like underfueling. That's very stressful on the body.
Yeah.
Sleeping 5 hours a night. That's very stressful on the body. So in my first half of the journey, when I didn't realize I had issues, I was very carefree. I was going out with my friends, partying, doing my thing, eating whatever I wanted. My body was very stressed out, but I was not mentally stressed. Then when I stepped into part 2, the full-time job that I hated, I was still physically stressing my body, but now I'm also mentally stressing my body. And it was the 2 angles coming in together, and that is the straw that broke the camel's back. And then my gut was like, all right, we're done with you. Like, you need to change your ways. So I wanted to point out that there's 2 types of stressors. So getting both under control is going to help with bloating. Because if you, like I said, aren't sleeping, I recommend 8+ hours a night, honestly, especially if you have gut issues. Like, you need that time to rest, recover, repair, eating enough. I see it so often with the women that I work with. They don't eat enough in a day, whether that be because they skip breakfast, they don't have time, they work through lunch, they just are taught to avoid carbs because carbs are the devil. Like, we've been taught a lot of misinformation. And so underfueling your body is going to be a stressor. And then, of course, there's the mental stress. So if you are jumping from working, writing emails, you're irritated at your boss, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to go eat my lunch now in an angry state. Like, your body cannot digest that food, even if it is the most nutrient-dense meal on the planet. You will not be creating stomach acid or digestive enzymes to break down and digest that food because your body is in a state of fight or flight. So when we're in fight or flight, our body does not care about breaking down that hamburger you just ate. It's prepared to run or fight, literally survival mode. So what I always do to get myself out of fight or flight before I eat is I make sure I sit at the table away from distractions. No phone, no computer, no TV. You may think scrolling on Instagram is not stressful. It is. So please do what you can, when you can, but sitting away from distractions is step one. Taking 3 to 5 deep breaths just to signal to your body you are safe. We are going to eat. Another thing that I do if I'm at home making a meal is I'll put on some music and I will hum along to it or sing along to it because that activates our vagus nerve. It's also fun. So, sing, dance, hum along to your music while you make your meal. That also is going to help put you into that rest and digest state. Take your time when you eat. Put aside like 20 minutes. If you've got 10 minutes to devour a meal, it's not enough time. 20 minutes, that gives you some time to clean up after, maybe chew really well. I'm sure you've heard it before. Our stomachs do not have teeth. If you can really break down that food before it hits the stomach, that's just going to make it so much easier for your gut to digest that food. And just enjoy it. Lastly, don't make it feel like it's a task to eat your meal in 5 minutes flat. Make mealtime enjoyable, a restful, relaxing space. Sometimes I'll sit outside on my balcony because outdoors is great. It's relaxing. But truly getting into that rest and digest mode is like step one, because digestion actually starts in the brain. So we need our brains to signal to our guts, it's time to eat. So stomach acid and enzymes and all the gastric juices start flowing so you don't end up bloated after that meal.
Yeah. I think in general, at least in North America, I think it's becoming more pervasive worldwide. And I don't know that Canadians are much different than Americans, but we don't necessarily look forward to our meals when our days are full and busy. And even my kids at school get an absurdly short lunch break. I remember when we had our Spanish exchange student, there was a French exchange student, they were just so appalled at the very short lunch time that they had overall. I was talking to someone yesterday about, how when you're running track or a race or something, you'd want to run against someone who's better than you if you were trying to improve it so you actually could understand the pace. This reminds me of eating with all my nutrition classmates in college and being done eating before all of them and not really understanding why I was done eating. I didn't think I was eating that quickly, but if you don't have, and before that, I really just was eating with my family, and I sat right next to my dad, who was in the military, and he probably ate his food so fast, right? And so that just became like the pace. And so until I saw a different pace, it's hard to realize you have to have this epiphany outside of yourself very often of, shucks, I can't just quit my job, right? So how do I create some safety in that space? And so how do you take a break to actually eat that food? So you talked about how digestion starts in the brain, which is lovely. So let's talk about what happens when we're skipping meals and not eating enough during the day, how people who aren't eating, I don't know, you've heard people say this, or water makes me bloated. So what would you say to those people? What's happening for them?
Over half of us are not getting enough magnesium, which is responsible for thousands of processes in the body.
But how do you know if you'd benefit from magnesium? What visible signs could you see? Here are some cases where I'd want you to start thinking, maybe I should try magnesium for that. Now, let's say you want to get in some good, deep sleep. Try a high-quality magnesium 30 to 60 minutes before bed. If you have any inkling of a headache or even just to relax any of those premenstrual cramps or muscle tension, especially post-workout, magnesium would be a superstar for filling in those gaps. Now, up to 600 milligrams for that headache. If you're finding your heart racing with caffeine or with stress, then for sure magnesium's calming effect could be helpful. But if you're dealing with eye twitches or restless legs, you're past the point of as needed. These are major red flags that you're probably depleted in magnesium. The good news is you can absolutely fix it, but it might take a few years to really fully replete those magnesium stores. But here's the deal. Don't stop when the symptoms stop. Just keep going to replete it even further. In any of these cases, I love Jigsaw's Mag SRT because it allows you to take a higher, more effective dose without any laxative effects because it's got an 8-hour time release. That's what the SRT stands for. It stands for Sustained Release Technology. It's the only time release magnesium with a human trial on the market that we know of. This is helpful to get all the benefits of magnesium throughout the day or throughout the night, depending on your need. You could take it at both times if you want. And it's Mag SRT's 20th birthday this year, so you can celebrate by getting yourself some Mag SRT with the discount code LessStressed10 at jigsawhealth.com. You can use LessStressed10 to get a discount on anything you want, as many orders as you want at jigsawhealth.com, including my favorite potassium cocktail and cod liver oil. So go check them out. And we just appreciate them sponsoring the podcast so much. So when you support them, it supports us.
Yeah. And like I said, this is a massive one. I would say this is probably the thing I see the most in my practice and the thing that I help my clients with because we're just used to living that way. So, for example, very common, women skip breakfast. They claim they're intermittent fasting. They've read about it. They believe it's beneficial. Hey, if you read about it and you think it's beneficial, I get it. I get why you're trying to do that. They're too busy to eat lunch. They skip it. They work through it or they're shoveling it down while they're working. When we go too long without eating or we're skipping meals or we're underfueling, our blood sugar is all over the place. So when our blood sugar drops too low, say you've gone 7 hours without food, your body needs food to exist. I mean, your brain is fueled by glucose. So when we don't have that fuel for a long period of time, blood sugar drops. And that is very concerning to the body because, oh my God, our brains are going to die. That's what the body is thinking, right? Because if we don't have glucose, it's extreme reaction. But what it does now is it's going to release stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, to get those blood sugar levels back up to a safe range. That is slowing down digestion significantly because, like we talked about earlier, when you are in fight or flight, when you have high cortisol, adrenaline, digestion is not a priority. So digestion slows, stomach acid, enzymes not being produced, motility is slowing down, and you are going to experience gas, constipation, and therefore bloating. Not to mention, when your blood sugar drops that low, your body is searching for fast fuel. It wants a quick hit so it can get back up to safe levels. So that is when the cravings kick in at 3 p.m. and you're at your office and you see the candy jar and it's looking real appealing at that time of day because you skipped lunch. And it's not a willpower thing. A lot of times people think, I just can't say no to the candy or the muffins or whatever when they're around. But if you aren't eating enough, and not just eating enough, but eating balanced meals throughout the day, so you're including your protein, your healthy fats, your fiber, your complex carbs, again, your blood sugar is going to be on this roller coaster, causing you to have these cravings. And the quickest hit of glucose to get your blood sugar back up is going to be the pastries, the chocolate, the candy, the sugary drinks. So it's not your fault if you are feeling these extreme cravings, but it is going to cause you to have digestive upset. So I really strongly recommend, if anything, have breakfast within 1 to 2 hours of waking. If you're not used to eating breakfast, I hear it a lot. I'm not a breakfast person. I'm not hungry in the morning. If you are drinking coffee first thing in the morning, coffee is an appetite suppressant, so it would make sense that you don't feel hungry. If you haven't had breakfast for years, your body is in a state of survival. It's not expecting food. You're not going to feel hungry. But if you can start just having something really small in the morning, like a little bit of a smoothie or maybe an egg, whatever it is, just to get that rhythm back, your metabolism will start ramping up. You will start feeling hungry again. I was just working with a client who never ate breakfast, ever. And I was like, you know what? Trust me, please, let's just do this. Try to have breakfast. So she did. And she let me know. I'm hungry in the morning. I wake up and I'm hungry. She's like, I've never had this feeling. She's lost weight. She's not bloated. Her food sensitivities are starting to reverse. Everything is improving.
Safety.
Exactly.
Your body like starts to shut things down when I don't know when I'm going to get fed again. And that's essentially like what happens. And even in your story, things were not good. And then you started this job and then everything really fell apart. And I see that. It's like you're getting by. And then when you add on this additional stressor, things fall apart. And I only smiled or smirked when you said women start intermittent fasting because I did that. I was working in a program where we were teaching intermittent fasting. I totally trashed my thyroid and adrenals and just emphasize, I always love stories, right? But what I've seen with clients that don't eat breakfast or have this fasting history is it takes some time for this stuff to come online. And we have a little bit of a recalibration on, there's no intuition around eating. We falsely think intuitive eating means stop when I'm full, eat when I'm hungry. But when the fallacy is like when you said, I'm not hungry in the morning, or if I drink coffee, I suppress my appetite. I notice if I drink coffee and I don't eat, like I am not an anxious person, but I'm like all scattered, right? And so that's how it looks for me because of those biochemical responses that you were describing, literally. It's, oh, I didn't eat on time. Like I wanted to drink, because people get worried about doing, a type A person especially, right? We get worried about doing it right because they've heard, oh, you should eat before coffee. And I think it's okay if you understand the positive negatives of how your body is going to respond. It's like, just eat your breakfast. And sometimes even me, I'm like, oh, an hour has gone by. It is time for me to eat. I must eat. And so anyway, I share that. I feel like it, for me, and I've noticed this with clients for sure, it takes some recalibration to get back to feeling like you can eat again, right? I'm just saying it doesn't happen in 2 days all the time. I feel like it takes some time, and there's like almost like a confusion for the body, right? It's because everything is happening in the brain. And so one, we've turned off a lot of things as we're under eating and under nourishing. And then we try to eat enough or a lot. And we're like, I don't know if this isn't the right amount sometimes. And so I would say there's a rough patch in between there of figuring out where to land, where you may end up overeating because you've been under eating for a while. And not that should be stressful. It's like, there's a part where you come back to the middle point if you just are patient with yourself as well. So I just wanted to, I don't know if you've seen the same thing or not.
Yeah, it definitely takes time. And I know we're all impatient because when you have been feeling unwell for decades in some scenarios, you want to feel better quickly, right? And there are definitely some quick wins involved. Like you often start to feel small changes quicker than like decades, but to get fully back to where you expect to be, it can take time. Because if you think about the damage you've done over the amount of years, it's like to expect that to be reversed in a week is unrealistic.
Yeah, or even a month or two sometimes. It's pretty unrealistic. Sometimes we have to stop and remind ourselves of how far we've come. And I find like in general, something I'm thinking about building and that I was doing for people is like, we actually need to remind ourselves of our own progress as we go as well. Because as perfectionists, when we don't go 0 to 100 or 100 to 0, we're frustrated. So that wasn't the goal. The goal is like incremental decrease and improvement, something measurable you can see. But our brain is constantly wanting to switch the field goal for us. So we have to fight that a little bit, not necessarily fight it, but we have to realize like that's a little bit of our stress response as well, unfortunately, right? That we want this to be perfect, or I find another like mental emotional pattern I see with clients is just like fear in general of, oh, today someone said, I'm just afraid that in 7 months I won't be better. I'm like, why don't we just focus on right now, this month? And I understand it's so normal. We're all trying to predict the future overall. Okay, I have a few more things I want to talk about, just what's going on in the body. But before we talk about movement and its impact on the body, I want to go back to something you said about sleep, because it can be, when you have physiological gut issues, sometimes sleep is impacted because of serotonin being made in the gut. But that said, there's a lot of sleep issues that are unfortunately created by our lifestyle as well. This episode's not about sleep, but I have to, when there can be a caveat, I want to stop and ask you about the caveats. What might you tell someone who is, I cannot sleep, or I'm sleeping poorly, or whatnot, related to gut issues, when you're like, yeah, but you need to sleep? And I know that's not a small question. I know it's actually a big question. But what might you say overall? Or would you just focus on what you can control? And what are some of the inconsistent routines in people who are dealing with bloating around sleep, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely. Step one is like making the time for sleep. So if you're only allowing yourself 5 hours of sleep, you're not going to be sleeping well. That's not enough. And it's also about having a consistent bedtime and wake up time, even on the weekends. This was huge for me. I hated my job. So I was staying up super late on the weekends, which like that fear of I want the weekend to last forever because I don't want to go back to work.
Yeah.
And then
revenge
come
bedtime.
Sunday night. Yeah, exactly. So then come Sunday, I'm trying to go to bed at a reasonable hour because I have to get up for work the next day and I cannot sleep because I stayed up until 2 a.m. on Saturday and I slept until 11. Getting a consistent bedtime within 30-ish minutes every night, even on the weekends, is going to help get into that routine. Waking up around the same time every morning, getting morning sunlight, that helps reset your circadian rhythm. Most of us are inside literally all the time. So if you have the ability to sit outside with your breakfast, even if it's just for 5 minutes, if you can't, sit near a bright window, open it if you can, try to get some morning light. That truly is very important for sleep, having that melatonin production at night to make you feel sleepy. Screens is huge. If you are on your phone, lying in bed, scrolling until the moment you close your eyes, that blue light is messing your sleep up big time. Again, messing up your circadian rhythm. So try to put your phone away 30 minutes, an hour if you can, before bed. I read before bed. It's a nice calming activity. And it's not like I'm reading an educational book before bed. I'm not trying to get my brain all activated. It's like a calming thing for me. Have a tea, chamomile tea with it. Create a calming ritual for yourself that says, I'm going to bed. And it doesn't have to be crazy. Like I literally have a tea. I get off my phone an hour before bed. I read a book I like. I go to bed at the same time and I wake up at the same time-ish every day. If I can, I go outside. I'm not going to say I'm perfect and I do it every morning. These things are quite important for our sleep. And they're things that I bet you 90% of people don't do. So if you're struggling to sleep, try some of them. You don't know until you try. Blood sugar is another thing that impacts our sleep. Like I talked about, if you're not eating enough at night, your blood sugar could be crashing. Cortisol and adrenaline pumps out at 2 a.m. when you're trying to sleep. So if you're waking up around 1 to 3 in the morning, wide awake, and you're like, why am I awake? What the heck happened? Could be blood sugar related. That was happening to me, actually. And it's not that I was under eating. It's that I have a really fast metabolism and I just need to eat more frequently than the average person. So I was stopping my dinner at 6 and not eating again until 8 the next morning. And that was too long. So I started having a very small balanced snack before bed. And I stopped waking up at 2 in the morning, wired and wide awake. So another thing to look at, but there are a lot of ways to improve sleep. So if you think you're someone who just can't sleep, I promise you there are things you can do to improve it to get that working for you.
Yeah, I think people are most shocked to hear that when I give them some numbers on like, you may need to hit this amount of carbs, they're like, what? And it is shocking. It's like, it's communicating. When you are eating and digesting carbs, the problem is when people are not digesting carbs because of some of the aforementioned things that we discussed. Because when we are not digesting food, you will have some gut imbalances typically. That's the side effect of not digesting, and not digesting happens when we're eating fast or distracted or all the things that you already said. And so it's like all of the pieces that need to fit together. So undigested carbs are really the problem, but then that's why people are surprised, because there's been such a conversation for so long about carb restriction, and people see less water retention and bloating because I think generally we have a lot of issues overall, and digesting and letting the body utilize carbs is so nourishing to the adrenals, to supporting blood sugar balance, et cetera. And so when not, exactly as you just said, it'll wake you up. And I think people are most shocked by that related to sleep, to be honest. So super good important reminders. And the other thing I wanted to underline that you said is hanging. I think sometimes our brain needs a place to like rest, right? It's, oh, I've heard some of this before. But what if you had a ritual? So as I think about, I feel like it's the end of the year and I'm journaling more and I'm thinking about intentionality. And I love the concept of a ritual. And a ritual doesn't have to be this like long drawn out thing, but it's like something you have reverence to, right? And so you brought up these couple things. It's like the ritual can be the mealtime can be the ritual in the first place, and the bedtime routine can be the ritual. And perfection here is not needed, right? I think our brain goes instantly to where we cannot do something all the time. And maybe it's not 7 days a week, maybe not always all the time, but what if it's the majority of the time to start with, right? What if we focus on everything we can do instead of the one day we can't do it because of the wedding we're going to or something? So I just like to remind us of our brain is so sneaky and wants to play tricks on us sometimes, or say, oh, I think I'm stuck in that place. And I always think if someone feels like they cannot do something, then who am I to tell them the otherwise? We have to have this kind of, that's having a wall around something overall. So another kind of pillar around bloating, we talked a bit about food and skipping meals and snacking and not getting adequate amounts of macronutrients, making you hungry and causing blood sugar dysregulation, which will cause sleep issues. So good, right? Like all these things super connected. Let's talk about how movement can impact bloating overall.
Yeah. And this is one I don't know people make the connection all the time, because I feel like we're either on one side of the spectrum or the other. We're either the people who are like crazy active and we're going to hit 7 days a week and we can't miss our workout and we love exercise, which is awesome. But then there's the other side where we're just busy and we work desk jobs and we have kids and I can't get to the gym. I wish I could. I just can't. I rarely see the middle ground, but the middle ground would be a great place to be if you can. And I'll explain both sides and how they impact bloating. So we've got the very stagnant person, the person who is working the office job, sits a lot. That is going to slow down your digestion. One of my biggest recommendations for clients who experience bloating and gas after meals is to move their body after the meal. If you cannot go for a 30-minute walk, that doesn't matter. Even if you are at home and you can't get outside, few chores. Okay, I've got a load of laundry to do. I've got 10 minutes. Let's do it now. I got to put the dishes away. Let's do it now after this meal. It is going to help stimulate digestion. So you've just eaten this meal. Now it's sitting there and you're just going to go and sit. And now everything is just sitting and it's very stagnant. Fermentation, bloating, gas, slow motility. It's all way more likely if you're just going to be very still. Whereas if you get moving and you put the laundry away, you do a 5-minute walk outside, you put the dishes away, whatever it may be, you are helping digestion move along. Things are moving quicker. It's going to move faster through the digestive tract, and it's not just going to sit there and ferment and cause the bloating and the gas. The other side is the person who is doing a lot of physical activity. They are loving HIIT. They are runners. That is stressful on the body. And I actually have proof of that. I myself do enjoy spin class. I do it once a week. It is a very high intensity workout. Like we are spinning, my heart rate is going up to 170. Like it's a lot. I'm sweating. It's a great workout. I wore a continuous glucose monitor for 2 weeks just as a fun experiment for myself. And I went to spin class. This was after I had eaten, so it wasn't food related. And just from the spin class alone, my blood sugar went up, just because of the stress that I was putting my body under. And that's not to say I should never do spin class because it's terrible for me. But if that is your main form of exercise and you are doing that 5 to 7 days a week and you are having gut issues, as we talked about earlier in the episode, stress is one of the biggest reasons why you have gut issues. So if you are also adding unnecessary stress by doing the HIIT, the spin, the running over and over again, that's not necessarily the best form of exercise for you to be doing. My favorite types of exercise for someone who has severe gut issues is walking, stretching, yoga, maybe some Pilates. very relaxing, chill exercises. You're moving your body, you're stretching it out. There, if you Google like bloating stretches on the internet, you can find like stretches that are good for the abdomen, like getting gas moving. Because honestly, a lot of times bloating is caused by food sitting there, fermenting, gas, buildup, slow motility, constipation. Not always, but a lot of the time. And if you can just help move those things along, that will at least reduce the amount of bloating that you're experiencing after meals.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I even finished talking about when people would come to us for bloating. There was a subset of them that I don't know how to describe it, but it was like they literally hated themselves or hated their bodies. And I always am really interested in emotions stored in the bodies. And I don't know if you generally is coming into your work regardless, because when we're having overall mindfulness or being intentional about these lifestyle things, which are actually the things that create our entire life, right? What we're doing every day throughout the day creates our life, no matter what. I don't know if you've ever seen where there's some personality profiles sometimes around this, because I think it's in Eastern Asian medicine, they talk about worry being stored in the stomach as well.
Yeah, I do. It's very sad, honestly. And I relate because I was that person, right? Like I was in my mid-20s and I did not like the way I looked. And it takes a hit to your self-confidence. And I do have clients on like discovery calls crying because they're upset about the way they look. Like they do not feel good in their skin. They do not feel good in their clothes. They feel very limited in what they can wear. And there's definitely a mindset piece around that. It's hard, right? Because it's hard to accept. We talk about body positivity, and it's hard to accept your body when you know this is not normal. Like I knew that was not my body. It's like it is, but it isn't. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of emotional aspects to it, for sure.
I think I was never prepared for all of the emotional, mental aspects in private practice when I started 10-ish years ago. That for sure, because of the gut-brain connection, there's always going to be, but because we're humans, there's going to be an emotional aspect to no matter what we're doing. And sometimes our physical symptoms just give us an opportunity to look at some other layers to unlayer, because I think no matter what, whether we like it or not, healing does come in layers. Just because you reduce or resolve some symptoms at a certain level doesn't mean there's not going to be other things for us to unlayer as part of life. The things to solve are inevitable. There will be many of them throughout time and throughout life. So if you could summarize a couple of things, if you could tell someone a few things that they can do today, and we've already covered this mostly, right? But we want to end on this tool. And I want to mention one thing before I go there. There is also another episode called, I think the title is just appropriate, where it's like, you can love your body and still want to change it. And I think sometimes it can take time to get to that point. Certainly, I think there's a lot of like potentially inner healing to different things around that. You can not hate your body and still want to change it as well, as is the point. But if someone was listening to this and they were delighted to hear all of these things that they can work on related to bloating, what would be, if you were going to tell someone who really needed to hear this episode, don't forget to do these few things every day to improve bloating? How would you want to wrap this up, or what would you want to tell people?
Yeah, I would start by saying add food back in opposed to eliminating food. Don't just look at the food sensitivity test and take it as is. Listen to your body. I eliminated so many foods just because a piece of paper told me to, and I didn't even react to them. So listen to your body more than a piece of paper. I also would highly recommend you start eating breakfast within 1 to 2 hours of waking up. If you're not used to breakfast, start with something small. When you do eat, ideally, you space your meals 3 to 4 hours apart. So maybe you have breakfast, lunch, a snack, dinner, spaced 3 to 4 hours apart. That's my regimen. Make sure all of those meals are balanced. So they include the protein, the healthy fat, the fiber, and the complex carb. I know carbs are scary for some people, but it can be like a piece of sweet potato, some rice, some quinoa, a piece of fruit. Like add in a little bit of carb if you're new to getting carbs back in your diet. Monitor the other things that we talked about. Even just looking in taking a step back and being like, okay, what does my sleep routine currently look like? What is my movement schedule? Am I moving or not? Stress, like how am I eating my meals? Just observe how you are doing these things and pick one thing from each category that you can improve. Maybe you can put your phone away at mealtime. That's the mindful eating aspect taken care of. Maybe you can go for 1 5-minute walk a day. Amazing. And then maybe you start going to bed around the same time every night. That would be a phenomenal place to start, truly. If you could just pick one from each category, that is going to be my wrapped with a bow advice.
I love it. This was fun. It's always fun to come back to these essential basics. Honestly, this is the stuff that we all need, but we don't always do. It's not as sexy to do the things that are free that really are so important. And I think stopping and being honest with ourselves is also hard to do. Like it's very easy to just skip over things and want to jump straight to the fancy stuff. And we need to have this stuff as well. Karlee, where can people find you online?
Yes, I am beyond.bloated on Instagram. That is my most active social media. I also have beyondbloated.com, my website. That is where you can learn more about working with me. And I do have a new free resource that I'm excited about. It is the What's Your Bloat Personality quiz. Everyone loves a good quiz. And everything that we talked about today is put into this quiz. So basically, you run through it. It's free. It's about 2 minutes long. And I will tell you what your bloat personality is based on your daily habits. I'll explain why your habits are keeping you bloated, and I will provide you with 3 personalized tips on what you can start doing today to start to improve your bloat. And that's on my website. If you just go to beyondbloated.com, it's like right there on the home screen. What's your bloat personality quiz? So you can do that.
Yeah. Well, when we get these types of things, like we love a good quiz or we love to identify because it starts to help us. It like does some of the work of telling us about ourselves in a way, or we can check it against ourselves. I think that's part of why we like it, right? It just like, it makes it easier on our brain. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.